So, I got on here yesterday and the video cut out. So, that was like 12 minutes later and lost all that footage. So, I thought I'd try again today. But to get to my point, I'm running for mayor, I'm running for president in 8 years. And then amidst that, the Kingdom of Hawaii, of all things, my homeland, you could say that, is reinstated as a kingdom. So currently, as you know, obviously it is part of the 50 states of the United States, but it is not my agenda and not my idea to talk about this kind of stuff, other than God has stepped into my life and has shown me day to day in different ways, in following his direction and just being desperate and not knowing what is to come next or what is up from down. A lot of times, like, he's had me move home from Anchorage, Alaska to Hawaii, where I grew up. And Hawaii is the last place that I wanted to be. But again, this all kind of came about and I got reminded of it as to a prophecy that I had been told 13 years ago that I had been running from. So when my wife, the love of my life, looked to divorce me completely out of the blue, I got reminded of that kind of stuff. So the last thing that I wanted to do was move home. And then when I got home, he got me involved with sovereignty movements. That was another thing. It was the last thing I wanted to get involved with. I didn't have an opinion on it. And then I don't know what you do with it. Or at least that was at the time. He's kind of led and shown me that there's obvious things that you can do with it. But when you come home and you start speaking on it, you feel very unqualified, but then you feel crazy day to day. Because you're alone in it completely. Like, even in running for mayor, I feel very alone in it. Completely alone. Like, I have family that they haven't turned their back on me, but they don't know how to deal with me. They know there's something different, but they don't know what, specifically what they could do about it. And anytime they try to speak anything counter to what I'm talking about, which is that God told me to come home, to speak on sovereignty, to run for mayor, to run for president 8 years from now, when the candidacy itself, or the running for mayor itself, looks like there's absolutely no strategy, no way that that's going to happen, let alone to speak 8 years into the future and say that I become president. Another position that I don't want. But, like, from their position, what would you do with something like that? And it's all getting related back to a divorce. Because that was everything to me. My wife was everything to me. And is. But it just is a lot for them to handle. And I don't mean to diminish what they feel and what their concern is, but to be on the other end of it and to not get the support in the ways that you expected, it's a lot for me to handle. And God has stepped into that role. Like, there were certain things that I was wrong in, with my wife and the relationship that I had with my family. Like, I would put them on the same level as her as far as influence sometimes, and that's not healthy. And I didn't think it was wrong, but I know it is now. But even when it came to my faith and family, like, in different ways, I put my family on the same level as my faith. And when he pulled that away from me, or they recoiled and pulled away from me, he's filled that gap, which was supposed to be the whole way that it was structured from the beginning. I'm seeing that now, or throughout this process in different ways, day to day. But it feels like you're being crushed. It feels like you're completely in the wilderness alone. And he has given me grace. He has given me strength in the moments to just break down and just cry out and be desperate. But in other times, there's been times where it's just been silent, and you're just left to trust and hold on to the faith and the hope that you have. but he's been faithful throughout the whole process. And none of this makes sense until it does, You can't explain this kind of thing to people. I mean, it's hard enough just to speak publicly a lot of times for Christians on their faith, let alone to speak about the things that I'm talking about, Like, come on, put yourself in my shoes. And it sounds like I'm bitching, and maybe I am. But how would you speak to the family that you idolized in a way that you didn't even realize you thought it was honoring? But to speak and say, hey, what you think is a divorce is nothing more than a prophecy that is coming to be true, or coming about. And I'm going to run for mayor, and I don't want to. And I'm going to win it, but I'm not campaigning. It doesn't look like I'm campaigning. I don't even like the word. I'm not a politician. Like, at the very most, I would hope to be a statesman. And amidst that, like, the prophecy was pretty vague when I first heard it. And I went to that pastor 13 years ago, and I was asking him for prayer because I thought I got a girl pregnant. And I went and said, hey, this is my crisis, pray over this. So he starts praying over it initially. And then he starts prophesying over here about all this other stuff that I just ran away from. And all he told me was, you're called to ministry, you're called to leadership, and you're called to some kind of online ministry. He didn't really explain. And I was like, hey, I don't know what the hell that is, dude. I'm not gonna cuss you out, but this is my crisis. Pray over this. I don't want any of that. You know what I mean? So when you, 7 months, 8 months ago, whatever it happens to be, when I come back and my wife has left me for somebody else and won't give me reasons why, and you're just wrecked and you're without answers, and you get reminded of that, and he's just showing me, hey, I spoke this over your life. There's a calling on your life. Like, you're gonna run from me again? Or are you gonna step into it? You're gonna man up in this way? You're gonna become what I purposed you to be? So, I stepped into it, but you don't feel adequate. You don't see how any of this is gonna happen. And then you come across different verses that just confuse you more than they help. Talking about in Malachi and Isaiah, the shoot of Jesse, or is it the root of Jesse and the shoot of David? I don't remember. That's what I'm talking about. Like, you try to share with people. It's like, I don't even remember the chapter and the verse. That's what I'm talking about. So it doesn't lend for validity, that you're just trying to share. But then after a certain number of times, it's like, you know what? I feel like I'm trying to get myself validated, and I need somebody to stand with me in solidarity and just agree with me that, hey, there is something to this, and it's just you and God. That's all that's left. And you know what? That's all that's needed. It really is. But it's just throughout this whole process, it just feels like I'm alone in this. And you tell people, you share with people, and you try to say, hey, this is faith. This is all that I have. This is scripture. This is how this ties in. This is how this makes sense. And it's just like they'll smile to your face, they'll nod in agreement, but you can kind of, and I guess that's a familiar spirit, you can kind of read their mind along with their body language, So as they walk by you, it's like, this dude's crazy. And it's a close family member, And more often than not, I tend to believe that happens to be what they're actually thinking. The body language is one thing. The example I give with the familiar spirit, and I'm running out of time here, I guess, is as soon as I came back to Hawaii, like, I just had these leadings of the Holy Spirit, which is like, I know what Michael wants, which is not to do anything that I'm told to do, but God would say, like, it's that still small voice, it's in here. It seems like intuition, but it's more than that. But it'd be something like, hey, go down the street, go talk to this person, turn on this street, go talk to that person over there, and they're gonna help you with this. And you think you're giving them a couple bucks if they happen to be homeless or something, but they're gonna recite back to you scriptures that you read that morning. And you don't know any of that in the moment. The example I gave was not in the best way, but it's like, just go drive down the street, go talk to that person over there. They got something for you. Or you got something for them and they may have something for you. Kind of like that, And I call that like an act of obedience, an exercise in obedience. But in doing that, they'll recite back to me, and I don't know these people, They'll They'll recite back to me the scripture or the situation that I was reading earlier that morning in the Bible, or the sermon that I heard. And it's like, okay, that's not by chance. That's God speaking to me through you, somebody I never met before in my life. You know, that kind of stuff. But when I mentioned like familiar spirits, like when I first got back on the flight back home, like I would sit down next to a lady or something, and we would start talking, and it's like, you know what, I didn't want to talk to her, but they have this stupid declaration form for what they say is, what do you call that, tourism? It is for tourism, but they say it's for customs. It's not, it's a lie. But you have to fill this stupid form out, and you need a pen for that. So it's like, I'm sitting there on the flight back, and I had in my Bible bag, or the case for my Bible, I had 4 pens the day before. And as I'm opening up the zipper, for some reason I know that there's no pens in there. And there's no reason that they shouldn't be in there, but I know that they're not in there. And I look over, and I have a bad attitude, and I look over, and the woman next to me that I didn't want to talk to, that I didn't want to have to ask to borrow a pen, had a pen in her hand, you know? So it's like, in trying to have a conversation with her, and I ended up enjoying it too, you know? But in asking God to take your heart and give you his and change your heart, you kind of fall in love with people that you don't really want to talk to initially sometimes, but then he puts that burden on your heart. So like I'll be talking with her or something, and for some reason I just know that she has 3 kids, and she has 2 sons and 1 daughter, and they're all under the age of 13. You know, I guess that's what they call a familiar spirit. So in a way, it's like in the demonic world, it's like being psychic. But it's just that kind of thing. Like I'll sit down with somebody, and I'll be talking and like sharing and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like I'm trying to honor you, Dad or Mom or whoever, in this way. But what I've been raised to think is actually contrary to what the word says, or there's a misunderstanding in this way as to what it is. And it'll get thrown back at me like, oh, you think you're extra, you think you're ultra spiritual, or you have this Pharisee attitude. And it's like, no, I'm trying to understand the word for what it is. And if it says, and if I actually get into it enough, and it says something contrary to what I've been raised to believe, I can't honor you as I thought I was, which is a version of idolatry, actually, if I'm not obeying what it says to do, but I'm honoring what you want me to do, which is conflicting with this, you know? So it's like I'm trying to share my heart and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like, this is actually where we had this whole thing wrong. And it's just thrown back in my face. And then on top of that, it's, you know, like having different ones trying to take you to a shrink and have you diagnosed, or told that what you say you don't want, you actually do want, and that you don't have anything in your life, and you're throwing yourself at God as if that's something wrong, or that he's not going to catch me, or that he doesn't have a plan, or that if I'm desperate for him, he's not going to give me an answer, or that when he does give me an answer, you don't believe it because it's too extraordinary to believe. So you dump on me and what I'm doing, which is right, in stepping out in faith and having it, actually being an example of what that looks like. And it's just, you know, I'm getting better by talking about it, I guess. Or am I just sharing? You know, I don't know. But that has been the experience, and you just feel very alone in it. And it's just doubts, a spirit of doubt, a spirit of anxiety, a spirit of fear that just afflicts you, you know, and you're just tormented by it. Tormented by people that are supposed to stand next to you, and tormented by your own thoughts, and just life. And yeah, on the outside though, it looks like, well, it's just a campaign, you know. This dude has lost it. He's declared himself a candidate for mayor, and the way he's going about it is totally wrong, and this is never going to amount to anything that he says. But when it does, and I know it does, it'll be a testimony. It'll be an example of faith, just blind faith. And I insist on it. It sounds arrogant to say that, but it's like, you know what, I know I don't have any of the qualifications in this way. I don't feel want this. But if this is what you're saying I should do, God, then just throw me at it and catch me. And give me the grace and give me the wisdom, give me the direction, give me everything that I don't feel qualified to ask for, but that I know that it's your will. And in doing that, I know that I'm going to receive it. Like it says, ask for it without doubt, knowing that you've received it, knowing as if you've already received it, because in a way you have, you know. I'm generalizing again, but it makes no sense, but it does. But it makes no sense to those that aren't part of it, and that's faith. It's a personal thing. And so people know something's up with me, but they can't really disprove, or there's nothing that I'm aware of that conflicts really with the word or the approach. There's unorthodox approaches that I've taken, because he's saying don't worry about the Pharisaical or the religious approach, because he's not in that. You know, he never saw a church. He is the body of Christ, and that is the metaphor that's given for the church, but he is not one that is concerned with somebody wearing a hat in church. He was the friend of the sinners. He was the one that hung out with the tax collectors and the prostitutes, you know. So those that are basically assuming that I'm in this position because of something that I've done and deserved, I kind of feel like Job. I do. And it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't deserve this. I'm just trying to be obedient.